¿Qué onda amigos de No Somos Ñoños? ¿Cómo están? Espero que estén de lo mejor. Yo soy Smuo, Salim para los amigos y el día de hoy tenemos el placer de presentarles a Marco Pecota, el diseñador y creador de Raybox Games, además de ser el creador de el juego que vamos a hablar hoy, que se llama Gates of Niflheim. Así que vamos a tener una entrevista, va a ser en inglés, pero les pondremos subtítulos. Marco, good morning. Can you say hi to our viewers?
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here and be able to chat here with Salim.
Okay, so we have Ok, amigos, perdón, esto lo tendremos en exclusiva aquí con todos nosotros. Vamos a tener preguntas, vamos a hacer un poco más de esto. Así que vamos a empezar. Marco, I
Sí.
know you started creating video games a long time ago, right?
Board games, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, board games. Yeah, you started creating them so far in the time. But what pushed you to create the first board game you created?
Well, I was making games back in the 90s. And what really pushed me, well, I used to play games when I was 13. So we're talking about, over 40 years ago of Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. So I love games. And I guess, my family business, we were in the meat industry, but it was a family business. So I was already kind of thinking about business. So it was basically like, how do I take, the hobby of loving games and, turn it into a business? And that's kind of what guided me to make my first games. And then the inspiration for my first game actually came from a game called Space Hulk by Games Workshop. And I played Space Hulk and I loved it. This is back early 90s, maybe even 90. And then from that spawned a game that I designed called Legions of Steel, which was a similar type of dungeon crawl, tile laying type of game, but with a bit more deep tactics and stuff like that.
Okay, okay. So after that, I know you quit for a bit in order to
Yeah,
follow a career,
for
right?
Yeah, for 25 years, I was in the film business, in the publishing business. We actually publish a magazine, Rue Morgue magazine, still, which is got a lot of fans in Mexico, actually. And then I also did furniture design and stuff like that. So 25 years passed before I picked up the pen again to design.
All right. And I think you could maybe missing something in your life because you returned to create board games, right? What was the like a sparkle or something that you had like maybe I could do this, use my new knowledge to create a better game or something?
Yeah. So what happened was I moved to Spain. I would hablo solo un poquito de español, so that's why I'm not trying to talk it now because I don't know if I'd be able to say everything. Although I wouldn't have had too bad of an accent. But anyways, moving to Spain, to Sevilla, southern Spain, Andalusia, it's very much more calm down here, tranquilo, and basically I could relax and start like kind of looking at my life more and what I wanted to do really. And as I was kind of enjoying a slower pace of life, there was someone in the UK who kind of wanted to take my old miniatures and remake them. And the discussion with them didn't go anywhere, but it made me thinking about games again. And then that I talked to a friend to see kind of like how the game industry was doing, the type of games that we like to make, right, and play. And he said it's doing great. So then I like took a look at what Kickstarter was doing, and I'm like, oh my god, this is a really good avenue. There's a real for an independent publisher to be able to make their games. So with the fact that I had a kind of a distribution avenue that was, if I make a game, I can put it on Kickstarter and someone will buy it. And then the inspiration to make games again, that's what collaborated to make kind of the first game that we made, which was Escape from Stalingrad Z. So
All right. And along with that creative process, how was the design of the paths unknown mechanic of the game? You started with Stalingrad again, and
yeah.
how was that? Like, created that creative process? It was hard
Uh,
to pick up the pace again.
Well, actually, no. I felt like when as soon as I started to look at designing again, it came way easier than I thought. 25 like I felt like I was looking at my old designs and I was already improving it very quickly. Like I'm looking at it, go, wow, this could be so much better this way and that way. And I don't know why it came so easy, but it came very, very easy. And maybe I don't know. I sat on my brain for 25 years and it all came out at once. Um, but the process is it was a long process to get to Stalingrad Z. At first, I was going to do Legions of Steel. So that was a science fiction game. It was going to be a dungeon crawler tile with miniatures and stuff. And I tried to do that a bit. I did some small Kickstarters to release old material. But it didn't seem like the big box game was going to really work. I didn't have enough followers and stuff. So then I was thinking about doing a historical World War II game. And that I worked on for about 6 months. And then I realized that, to get to the market historical, which I love a lot, might be more difficult. So I was playing Zombicide, and I go, man, we just got to add zombies to this, and it's just going to get so much more like traction. And so then I remember I was kind of working with some friends, they weren't part of the company yet, Tom Frank, but I would call him every Saturday and just talk about stuff. And I said, what do you think if I add zombies into it? And I was nervous, right? Because I thought he was going to be like, no, you shouldn't add zombies. It's like, but no, he was totally on board. So then that encouraged me. And then after that, and it was going to be, again, another tile laying system similar to Zombicide. And I had talked to another friend named Adam Dobbins, who's a designer in Australia, and some other people, and they mentioned certain things that collaborated together to me to kind of decide to create the game in a book format where you play directly on the scenario book. And also, so that's a big thing about the Paths Unknown is that you play it right on the book. You don't have tiles, you don't have nothing. You just turn the page, depending what what your choices are. You'll turn the page and go to a different page to play the game. And there's like in Stalingrad, there's like 45 plus scenarios, something like that. And then in the, there's a certain amount of scenarios, like a lot of scenarios in each book. And the other big thing I can say when I started designing after was about telling stories, really. So I really love telling stories and creating stories. And from just kind of a board game situation, once I started to think it was a book, then I was like, oh my God, this can be more of a story as well. It's like just the fact that it's a book makes you think of a story, right? So then we started, why don't we do a choose your own adventure style and like really kind of give a bit of information in it, but have lots of clues and entries that you have to read if you accomplish certain things, and then you flip to the back and read it, but you only get to read it if you do certain things. And then we created a matrix, and the matrix was kind of like a movie with 3 or 4 different endings. And so this matrix was, not that sophisticated, but it had like little branches, and you could go in here, you can get out there. Depending what your choice are, you'll go down different paths, right? And so with the matrix and the idea of doing a story and all that, it kind of all culminated into the final kind of unique game. There's really no other game really like it, I think, even when you consider all the mechanics. There are other games, like it borrows from other games, or like we all do when we make games. There's always, it all comes from chess, really, right? And then or something like that. And then what happened was, I think it's how you combine. It's like a pizza, right? You have a pizza, margarita is just tomato sauce, and so that's a good pizza, tastes good one way. Then you put on Parmigiano, and you put on salami, you put on artichokes, or you put on piña if you want, and then it tastes like a totally different thing. So that's what a game is. It's just using different parts, and that's why this pizza is different than that, or if it's a cake, different ingredients, right? But yeah, that's basically the process, and it just pushed through. We created, once they decided to go zombies, it was about another year of development. By then, I had brought a bigger crowd to my brand, like fans and stuff. And then that's when we launched, and it was very successful. So yeah, that's kind of the relatively short process of what happened. If you have any questions about it specifics, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, that would be great, but that could be for another interview. But because right
Yeah.
now we're heading to the new game that it's called
Okay.
the Gates of Niflheim, right? Which
Right,
is
the Gates
actually
of Niflheim. You don't pronounce the F, so it's the
Nilheim.
Gates of Niflheim. I pronounced
Oh,
it the Gates of Niflheim for like 6 months, and then I don't know how I figured it out, but eventually I realized it was Nilheim. So it's funny. There's a silent F in there, but whatever. It's
Nilheim.
like
Okay.
it's like the H in Spanish, right? No, you don't pronounce it, right? So.
Yes. So, but it's tricky, right? Because in Spanish if we put a C before an H, we pronounce it. But
Yeah,
I thought the F would be pronounced as well. But okay, it's good to know that it's
yeah,
Nilheim, right?
yeah. It's easier to say it. It's a Niflheim. It's just Nilheim. So, anyways, if you, it's very Nordic.
Right now it's in game founding, right? Can you tell us about the
Yes.
process of bring your game to that platform and how difficult was to create the campaign, the scenarios,
Right.
and the most important thing I guess is where did you get the inspiration to create this game? What changed you from World War II and zombies, for
Yeah.
example, to a
Yeah.
Nordic game?
Okay. So I'll start the first thing first. The change really came because I wanted to create another, reach another crowd, right? So I knew there's only so much of a crowd that is interested in World War II and zombies. It's a big crowd actually. It's very niche but big. And the idea was to do fantasy-based things so that I could get maybe D&D players and other kinds of people who people who play Gloomhaven or Jaws of the Lion or Descent and stuff like that. So the idea was to bring those people, bring those over to the system. And so when I was deciding to do that, you could do high fantasy with wizards and paladins, and I really didn't want. I wanted to do something more gritty and dirty and more like almost more real, right? And so that's why I chose. And Vikings, I always was interested in it, and I knew that lots of people were. And it's still fantasy, but with Viking specific. So that's why I chose Vikings to do it. And the other cool thing I chose for Vikings, because they have a great mythology. They have lots of undead. They're called Draugr in Nordic, in Old Norse and that. So even though they're kind of zombies, so to speak, I use all the I don't use the word zombies in it at all. I use all the terms from the mythology of from what the Vikings had, the names that the Vikings had, the way that they act and stuff like that, as much as possible, still in the game situation. So it was about kind of keeping the integrity of Viking mythology while creating a game which was fantastic, right? So that's kind of how the choices went for that. And as far as like launching a game, like we could do a bunch of podcasts and they're all about how you launch your game on whether it's Kickstarter or GameFound or whatever. But I can say a few things about it. One is you kind of have to make sure you feel very confident with the quality of your game. You want to be able to release a preview copy of the game for people to play at least 3 to 6 months ahead of your launch. So you want to be able to give something to people so that they can comment on it. If it's your first game, you're going to probably want to spend, honestly, 2 years of development of building your crowd. Once you've got your first game and you have people following, and then maybe you want at least 6 months to a year for each release. I've sped up a bit, so I'm trying to do it 2 a year, so every 6 months to do a new game. But it's time. It's just you need to take the time to develop it. Use Facebook, create groups. It's a very great tool for indie designers. It's probably the best tool to reach potential players because there's so many groups on there for gaming, and you can always post to those groups, not spamming, but and the thing is, once you start creating your own group and posting to that group, start building an email list. That's another very important thing. So you build your email list so that you have people who interact. You can send out an email once or twice a month, and those things, given enough time, you will build an audience. And once you've done that, you could start doing all the other stuff that you need to do to turn it into a campaign on GameFound or Kickstarter, which includes lots of art, what the content's like. If you take a look at you just got to look at, like, if you look at mine or many of the other good ones, you'll just see you'll see the list of all the stuff they have. You can just do the same thing. Basically, that's what I did. I would just go and look at like what the big guys were doing, And it's okay. They got, what's in the box. Okay, so I got to do one of those images. And they have like, how to play the game. I got to do that image. And I take a look, and it was just copying what other people did, that were successful. So that's basically it. It's basically apply yourself, go on social network, build your Facebook group, build your email list, and take the time necessary to grow your. Like, I wouldn't even consider launching anything with a minimum. So you have at least 1,000 people on your email list. And there's way more we can talk about how you should launch something, which we can save for another episode. But in summary, that's kind of what it is.
Okay, that seems exciting. I think I never could do that because I'm not as creative as you guys. So I'm going to enjoy your games.
Okay, very good.
And how hard was to create this game in comparison to the previous ones?
So it's easier as since it's using the same system. So the name of the system is the Paths Unknown system, and the Paths Unknown system, so it's Paths Unknown, move your own adventure. So Paths Unknown is like which path will your character, your hero take. So you don't know, you don't know where you're going to go. So that's kind of where that comes from. And move your own adventure is kind of like choose your own adventure, but you're using miniatures you don't have to use miniatures, but you can play with miniatures or with the standees or whatever from the box, and you're moving them. So that's kind of like move your own adventure, right? Well, anyway, so the thing is, this is the third one in the series, so it was easier, I think, than doing the first two. I also, the first two I put it was a learning process, and I put a lot more text and stuff that I thought, we kind of like condensed it a bit, so it was a little bit easier to control it. So I found that, and it's a very enjoyable experience. It's getting more enjoyable almost in some ways because, I don't have as much stress because I'm following the rules, right? And the next one's going to even be easier. So that's how it goes, right?
Okay, you're saying you're following the same path but there's a substantial upgrades to that one?
To the new game?
Yes?
It's not that it's an upgrade. It's like, movies. Okay, think of it like a movie. My games are like movies. So is there an upgrade from one movie to the next? I mean, if they're good movies, they're just good movies. There's no real upgrade. One is science fiction, high tech, CGI stuff, and you go, "Oh, that looks really cool." But if you are looking at like a really good, the Mexico produces a lot of good, or Guillermo del Toro movie that doesn't necessarily have a lot of special effects, and it's more dark and horror, right? So you can't say, what is there an upgrade really? It's just a different theme. It's a different story, and that's what it really is. I mean, the one thing I'd say is that our miniatures are getting better. If you're into miniatures, because we've learned to make more complex, more dynamic figures. So the miniatures are kind of like the best miniatures we ever done yet. So those are better. And the rules are designed, 90% the same as the rules from the other ones, but modified to work with, more hand-to-hand combat and, what a medieval or, Viking age kind of combat would have been. So we've had to tweak it for that. And but otherwise, it's like a movie, man. You look at one movie and you look at another movie. They're both good movies. They're just different movies.
Okay, and
like Alien and Aliens, one is got that really claustrophobic feel to it, and the next one's like a shoot 'em up Hollywood movie. They're both really great movies, but one really isn't an upgrade. They're just, like I said, different stories. Yeah.
okay, and speaking about stories, what about it? And what can I expect as a player? Would it be catchy? I would love that. Well, does it have plot twists? How long to beat? Tell me about the story, please.
Well, the general story, I can tell you the preamble to it. And what happens is when you're playing it, the story unfolds, right? And you're going to encounter different creatures, and you're going to have different problems to solve as you move from one map to the other. But the preamble to the story is it's basically set in the year, let's just around 800 AD, right? Right in the closer to the tail end of the Viking Age, at 800 AD, there was this jarl. A jarl is a Viking king, so they called them jarls with a J, but it's a Y, right? Just like so. Anyways, what happened is he was like basically a tyrant, and he wanted to kind of be immortal, like, you know, all these tyrants and tyrant kings type of would be. So he started mixing with the dark arts, and he was going to create a tomb, a catacomb where he would be buried, and then he would come back to life and live together. Well, what happened was his subjects, they realized how evil it was and what the danger that this was. So they entombed him and a whole bunch of his crew of his in there before he was actually dead. So he was never able to escape it. Then what happened is the Vikings kind of basically covered it up, and they left the island as cursed, and no one went near the island for 100 years. Well, during the Viking Age, there were the Irish monks, and the Irish monks started during the period to go to different islands and places, and they would build monasteries. So they started building. They found this island. Unbeknownst to the Vikings, the Irish monks found this island. They came across it. They decided to build a monastery on it. So then what happened was the Vikings realized, oh my God, they're disturbing the island, which we've kind of basically shrouded in darkness until now. And they sent like 6 ships to go and take out the monks, because the Vikings were pretty ruthless, right? They would like kill everything. If they didn't always kill, but lots of times they did. Anyways, they send the 6 ships. The Jarl sends at the time, and they never return, and no one hears anything about it. They're like, what the hell happened to our ships? So it's a big mystery. So what they decide to do is, instead of like sending another 6 ships, they're going to just send a little kind of commando group of the best Viking heroes to go and kind of scope out the island and figure what it's out, right? And that's kind of where what happens is the ship that's taking them there gets shipwrecked, gets smashed, and you start the game basically with a Viking on the shore and, you know, the Draug undead approaching you. And so you basically start there with your one character. And then as you go along, you know, you have to obviously win that scenario, defeat the Draug, escape. And then you're going to slowly add other heroes to your party, and you'll get to add other foot soldiers to your party, and you can start building it out a bit, and you'll continue the process. And on occasion, you'll what happens is some heroes that we've included in the game are also Christians, so they're not just Vikings. So you can play like a warrior monk, or you can play various different characters from that age, so to speak. And then we even have a bonus figure, which is a Roman figure. And the reason he's in there is because once you get to Niflheim, Niflheim is the underworld of the Vikings, right? It's between Midheim, which is like where we live, then there's Niflheim, and then there's Hell. And so it's the in-between stage. So you're there to close the gate. Anyways, in that realm, of course, undead and people from different eras would be there. And we have this Roman soldier who's there, who was with Jesus Christ. He was one of the ones when they stabbed Jesus Christ. So he is cursed to live forever. And he can be one of the heroes that you play as well, of course, because he looks like a Roman, of course. He's got his Roman armor and stuff. He's kept it. And so he's lived like for the last 800-900 years, and he can be one of your characters. So that's kind of cool too. So there's lots of cool little things like that in the story, and it unfolds. You play one scenario, then at a certain point it'll break off, and you can play it again and play different scenarios and find a different path and how to get there, you know? So I don't know if that's too much or too little.
No, that's too perfect, actually.
Okay, great.
And once we finish the campaign, we could have some replayability.
Yeah, because there's 9 different heroes to choose from. So the most heroes you can have in your party is 4. So 1, you can play the whole thing again with different heroes and different skills. So each hero has their own skill tree that as you get experience, they each have unique skills that get released, and you can kind of choose which ones you pick. It's like 3 different columns. So you kind of choose a little path of how you want to develop your hero with their skill tree. But of course, each one's different. So, one is more like there's this holy monk, and he has a whole bunch of kind of mystical type of powers that help fend off the Draug and or increase the glory of the group. And then there's one that are more warrior-like, and there's, so you can kind of choose different ones, and that'll kind of change the dynamic and how you play the story, right? And another thing is that there's a different path, so you can choose to go a different way. So you'll do some of the same scenarios, but you won't do all the same scenarios. So you can kind of pick a different way to do stuff.
All right then. And you said we can have up to 4 heroes in our party, but the maximum of players is two, right?
Yeah. Well, I would say only because if some of the maps, smaller maps, you will only have two of your heroes on the map. The other two aren't participating in that actual, and you can switch between heroes as you go from one scenario to the next scenario. And in some scenarios, you can have all four. So since the minimum is two, um, that would best work with the co-op of two, basically. Yeah.
And why is that? Why is not up to 4 player account like many other games? Why do you choose to keep it between like 2 players maximum?
Because based on the size of the map, which is basically a 1 8.5 by 11. It's a normal sized book, magazine, however you want to say it, but a nice thick paper. When you play on it, the left side is the rule set and the right side is the map. So it's basically the size of a page. So it works very well when you have two people, but if you had four, it would be too much going on, and it really doesn't work well with four. So there's no, I mean, you could play with four people if you guys decided, you could, but I just don't want to. And some people might like playing it with four, but it just traditionally it wouldn't work great, I think, for most people. So I don't want people to be like, oh, you said I could play with four, now I got it, and it's like, it wasn't very, we didn't enjoy it. So I don't want to get it, do that. But you actually can play it with four. You just have to share decision making and stuff like that.
All right. And have you ever thought in an expansion like another book or something in the future?
I have so many ideas for more games. We're going to keep making them. We're going to see how well the Vikings end up doing. I mean, we have more expansions for the World War II zombie. We can have other expansions, like for the Vikings. We were thinking of maybe doing one that was set in North America, so it's the Vikings and the natives of North America kind of combining together to fight a greater evil. We've even thought about doing one with the Aztecs and setting one in Mexico with but with the Spanish and the Aztecs, and I think the miniatures for that would be awesome. And we would use, of course, that mythology and stuff like that. And my wife is she's from Mexico. She's Mexican, and so I've been to Mexico quite a bit. Oaxaca mostly, I like. But she's from close to Mexico City, so yeah.
Okay, that's great. And yes, the Vikings was the first one in America
And
actually.
North, yeah, yeah, yeah. After,
Oh,
yeah,
you were talking about the possibility of expansions in the future, but
yeah.
are you totally happy with the result of the game, or there's something like with more time you could have improved with this history or something like that?
Well, I'm sure that as we grow the game, we're going to refine the mechanics and we can improve, right? So, there will eventually be a second edition like games do. And when we decide to do the second edition, it will take our experience that we had and their players' experience, their feedback over a couple years. And with that, we'll improve for sure. So that means that the new games that we'll do will always have the new improvements attached to it, right? And, yeah. So, and then, every game, like from one game to the next, even though it's like again, watching a movie, a different story, um, they'll always have some other unique mechanics specific to that game, right? So, for example, in Stalingrad Z, which was World War II Zombies, they had a fatigue track. So you're basically kind of like in a video game, you're getting tired, you have to eat food and stuff like that, right? In Nilheim, you don't have to worry about food. Is what they call the fate track, and the fate track charts your glory and your corruption. And depending what you do, it could move you up and down that fate track like it's like a U, right? So you can go, and then you can use your glory to do cool stuff. But if you use too much of it, it'll put you into corruption, and then you get negative effects. So I guess what I'm saying is we will be improving games as we go along because we streamline stuff. Um, but also, what we'll be doing is every game will have a unique aspect to it that kind of makes it also different from the other games.
Right, and talking a little bit of the mechanics. Um, how friendly it's for the new players that doesn't know anything about these type of games? Are they like, oh, I love video games, but I want to play like with a friend right here in my table, for example?
Yeah. Well, the good thing about the game is it doesn't take a lot of space, while many games do chew up a lot of table space, right? But it's not really. It's a medium weight game, so it's not a beginner's kind of game. But what we did to help with the rules, which we didn't have in Stalingrad Z, but we do have an Escape from Project Riza, which is the sequel to that, and in Gates of Niflheim, is we have a learn to play book. So it guides you through the first 5 or 6 scenarios, and you only have to learn like a certain amount of rules. So it's almost like a tutorial, right? But it's still part of the story, and that makes it easier for anyone who wants to learn how to play. Because instead of like reading the whole rule book, you only have to read the rules for that portion. Because we introduced the rules slowly over the span of the 5 scenarios. So one is it's not like a completely for beginners, but two, we do have a mechanism so that it's easier to introduce the rules if you were doing this for the first time, not to get frustrated, to just work with the rules, but it gives you time to learn it so you don't have to learn everything at once. Plus, just like many games, we'll have a learn to play video, so you can just look at the video and ask questions and stuff like that. We're always open to, we answer our questions is pretty quickly if anyone has them. So yeah.
Okay, and you said these were like the first five scenarios were like a tutorial, but there's a way like if I already played the game and this is my third time or something, I can skip that scenario, or I have to play it like.
Well, yeah, you don't like once you know how to play, you would just play the scenarios without looking at the tutorial guy. You just play it, right? They're good scenarios. The first couple are easy, and then after that, then you have to start making decisions and stuff like that. It's not like they're useless scenarios that you never play again. Although they will be easy if you're playing it around the third time in that.
All right.
Ilse, I'm in a meeting that we're recording. Ilse, 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 I'm in an actual podcast. Sorry, that's my wife.
Don't worry.
Oh,
Um,
by the way, on the cover, as it turns out, on the cover of Nilheim, the girl there in the middle of it, that's actually her, as it turns out.
okay, and doesn't have anything to do with the game, but you said that she was Mexican, right?
She,
What is your favorite Mexican food? That's important. Sorry.
well, I don't know. There's so many foods. There's so many moles, and I cook Mexican because I do all the cooking at home. So we're always making tortillas of one thing. And here we actually got a lady who makes some really good tortillas. Not quite as good as in Mexico, but they're pretty good. I think the salsas are salsa verde or pico de gallo. Like the foods are all great. So it's just like which salsa am I going to use? That's going to be a little bit different. And the moles have all different kind of salsas, right? So it's hard to say which one. I can tell you the most one I eat is taquitos for sure, but
Okay, okay. That makes us happy, believe me. So you like spicy food, right?
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Okay,
I might be
that's
in Mexico. What's the next time? Next year I'll be in Mexico again for sure. My Ilse's brother, and her name, Ilse is half German, half Mexican. So that's why her name is Ilse. But her last name is Godinho, so it's like very Mexican, Spanish Mexican. And but her brother Rodrigo lives in Puerto Vallarta, so we visit him once in a while, and that's cool.
okay, okay, that's great. You're always welcome here in Mexico.
Gracias.
And for almost finishing this interview, can you tell us how is going the manufacturing of the game?
Well, okay, so manufacturing aspect of gaming, which again could be like multiple videos, but basically, I have a lot of my experiences in manufacturing. It was both in the food industry when I first started, and then in making movies, and then in publishing a magazine, which is all printing and stuff like that. And I made other games, so I took a lot of experience from my previous work, and so it didn't make it as hard but to do the manufacturing as it would if you were doing it for the first time. It's pretty complicated. There's a lot of moving pieces to kind of keep track of. I like the manufacturing process. Like it's an actually like being involved in it. Like it's interesting to me. So some people would hate it because it's more business, right? It's more, you know, attention to detail on certain things. So the process of manufacturing, especially for a game that has miniatures and all this other stuff, it's got a lot of different pieces that you have to keep track of. And there's in so we're manufacturing in China. It's really the only place you can manufacture one-piece miniatures the way we want to do it. And you're dealing with the distance and time. So you need a good partner who's going to be your manufacturer to help you really navigate that. And you need enough time because you need them to make there's going to make mistakes. So you can't push it too fast. You have to get the samples made. Then they have to come to you. You can look at them. Then you're going to need changes. Then they're going to make the changes. Then they're going to send it to you again. And they're going to make more changes. Then do it again. So you have to be patient with the process. And you got to make sure you check everything. Otherwise, you can, you don't want to, you get a game that's missing a part, then you got to ship everybody that part. It's like crazy.
And kind of spicy question.
Yeah.
How long until everyone can have its own copy approximately?
Well, we've scheduled the delivery date of Niflheim for 1 year from now.
Okay, so for everyone in the world.
Everyone in the world, yeah. For
Okay,
December the 15th is our schedule. December the 15th. So yeah, before Christmas.
okay, that would be a great Christmas present.
But
Oh,
over time, I want to start reducing the amount of time necessary to deliver because as we build a reputation and we have games and we know who our backers are, we know who our fans are, we can kind of try to get ahead of the ball. It's like I don't have to worry if it's going to fund. I know it's going to fund, so it's just that maybe I can do a few things in advance to shorten the amount of time to get it delivered. And yeah, so I would love to be able to deliver them in 6 months after, make it, and then 6 months would be great. But that's something we have to work towards.
okay, and how difficult it's to send it to our Latin America, for example, from Mexico to down in the globe?
Well, we're going to be shipping to Mexico out of the U.S., so that's how it would go. We go by FedEx or UPS or whatever.
Okay,
But we
and
don't ship much into South America. Is extremely difficult. There's huge taxes they have there. And even Mexico is a little bit tricky. But South America, I tried to send a package there, and the guy had to pay hundreds of dollars just to release it from the customs, and it was like so. Then they sent it back, and it wasn't. This was from early on, but it's very complicated to ship down there. We shipped a few. But I just tell everybody, look, it's going to be expensive. Like, don't get angry at me when they tell you got to give them $100 more. They it's not money. You're not giving it to me. But Mexico, we've shipped down Red Sea into Mexico. So yeah.
in Mexico, we're kind of safe, right? So everyone in
Yeah.
Mexico would have
Yeah.
their copy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and about the language of the game, I think it'll be for the moment just in English, right? But it's up to the backers to have their rules in their language, right?
Right. So it's in English right now. If we get enough Spanish backers, whether it's from Spain or anywhere, then if we get 100, then we'll translate it as a PDF. So you get the printed book in English, but you can reference the PDF with all this. The rules and the scenarios would all be in Spanish in the PDF. But we're also looking at working with Spanish publishers here in Spain. And if one of those work out, they might decide to translate it and actually print it in Spanish, in which case then you would get a printed copy. But I can't promise that, so I don't want to make it sound like it's going to happen, until I know it's going to happen, because I don't want to, misguide people.
Right then. And well, I think that this is all for today.
Yeah.
we really appreciate you to have here in No Somos Ñoños. And
Gracias.
anything else you want to say to our viewers?
Well, no, look, I'm pretty open. If you can join like our Facebook group called Paths Unknown if you want to like kind of keep up with stuff that's happening. We also have a newsletter. Of course, it's in English, but Google translates everything, right? And yeah, so you can check us out online, and maybe you can put some of the links or whatever down below or in the after the podcast image. And I'd love everyone to check it out, and I'm always open to questions. So if you're on Facebook, for example, or you get one of the newsletters, or you're on Board Game Geek. I don't know how big a Board Game Geek is down in Mexico, if people know about it, but yeah, you can ask questions there, and I'm always answering. So I'm there to personally answer it as a designer.
Okay, well, this will be in Spanish for our viewers, a little bit sorry.
Sí.
Ok, amigos, ya
No
lo
problem.
escucharon. Marco Pecota nos invita a checar todas sus redes sociales, a checar las actualizaciones sobre el juego y vamos a estar aquí pendientes sobre cualquier cosa. Cualquier actualización se las vamos a hacer saber aquí en No Somos Ñoños. And well, Marco, thank you very much for your time. We hope you liked being here with us. And
thank you for having me. Yeah, it's always great to be here.
And I think in the future we
Muchas
can
gracias.
speak more about the game.
Seguro.
Ok, thank you so much. And bueno, amigos de No Somos Ñoños, yo soy Salim, él es Marco. Aquí estaremos para que se les ofrezca. Y nos vemos en la siguiente. Adiós.
Adiós.